folks, Carol over here with Nyth. If I do that just right, don't make my first hits too hard, and my last one's not hard enough, I can often get multiple splits at a time. Anyway, this is the new axe handle in operation. Soaked for a couple days into a few nice coats of mineral oil, and seems to be back to splitting just the way I like it. And of course, I did want to address something I've mentioned this before in some videos, kind of like that. That's what I'm going for on most of my cuts. This is an axe. If you're not familiar with that, an axe is actually designed for doing things like cutting down a tree. There are splitting mauls designed for doing what I'm doing. They're generally bigger and heavier and blunter because all they're designed to do is kind of use the weight of their own head and the momentum of the swing like that to cleave the wood apart. I am using this as a splitting maul because most mauls are designed to split large and heavy chunks of wood. For my little mini wood stove, my 7.5-inch rounds here, they're not large, and they're not very hardwood because also, as I've discussed in the videos, there's no hardwoods that live anywhere close to my area that grow anywhere around here, so all of the wood I'm splitting is aspen and pine because that's the only things that grow here, so that's what I use. And they are softwoods, so not at all hard to split. And so just for me and the size of wood I'm doing, this little axe is a really perfect size for doing that. Even though it's not technically a splitting maul, having the extra weight of, they make like 10-pound mauls and stuff, that would just be complete overkill and actually require more effort for what I'm personally doing than this would. If you're splitting 16, 18, 20, 24-inch logs, and you're splitting oak or maple or something like that, you're not going to want to use a little axe like this to do your splitting. But if you've got a mini wood stove and mini firewood, this might be a really good option that's actually less effort than a maul, which is basically what I am using it as. Now I also this gets asked on every video, I assume by people who either I've never heated with wood or I've never had a tree like an aspen. This is aspen wood. For one, it's really pretty. Check out all the pretty like red and gold colors in that wood. This has been long dead, many, many years, but the bark peels off neatly like that. Let me actually show you something here because this one's a good example. If you can look close there where the bark peeled off, see the little like bug tunnels and stuff right on the wood itself. As a tree is dying, that layer under the bark is where bugs like to hang out. So as I'm splitting away here, I'll usually be chucking the bark pieces that come loose off to the side. And people ask, oh, why are you throwing that away? Why don't you burn it? Well, for one, it's where all the bugs tend to live. And because I'm not wanting to bring them into my house, it's a good thing to leave outside. There you can see how the bark just shatters off it. Also, aspens almost, this is not a scientific description, and people ask about, well, why don't you put your wood in something so you don't have to bend it over? Guys, I'm out here getting my yoga practice and my mobility routine. Some pieces land on the ground, I have to bend over and pick them up. It's good for me, I'm not too worried about it. If I get older and it makes that harder to do, I'll do a different system then. Anyway, I think of aspens like a big grass more than a actual tree. They grow from interconnected roots. They've often been said to be the largest living organism there is. It seems like that, as we understand more about it, that title might actually be taken over by fungus, the fungi that all connect through giant wooded areas like the Russian boreal forest and such. But anyway, very big organism. If you don't know how they grow, if you grow like an oak tree, it starts from an acorn. Tree grows up, there's a tree, grows branches and leaves. When that tree dies, it's dead. Though it does seem like trees have an ability to talk to each other and communicate with each other, it's kind of its own thing. Aspens grow more like, if you've ever had crabgrass growing, you know, you pull off where it comes up at one spot and it just shoots up a new root somewhere else and sends up another blade. Probably 10 more places for everywhere you tried to pull it up. That's kind of how aspens grow. They're all interconnected under the ground, and if you cut down one, or a beaver chops off a few, I just saw that the other day when Burley and I were walking, a beaver head mowed down a good bit of the small saplings coming up on a little aspen grove. It just sends up new shoots. And they're not a long-lived tree. Also, if you're used to things like oak and maple, it's rare actually that a pine splits its bark off that neatly. But that is all bark. And that just breaks down in the woods slowly and returns to the earth. Anyway, so aspens keep popping up like that, and they live like 20 to 30 years, and then they die and they fall over after they're dead for a few years. So unlike trees that really have a very, very long lifespan or are around for hundreds or even thousands of years, I really do think of aspen as like a really big tall grass that just grows up quickly and dies somewhat quickly as far as the tree world is concerned. And so it's a good thing to use for firewood when it's one of the really two main trees that grow in your area, because it's always growing and dying. And on that note, it's the only real, I guess we've got two. We've got cottonwoods, which are an even softer, pithier wood that's less preferable than pine or aspen for firewood. But cottonwoods, which like to grow in river bottoms with their feet actually in the water, those and aspens are the only two deciduous trees we have around the area, ones that drop their leaves, versus pine trees and spruces and so on that are conifers and that are evergreen. Occasionally you hit a knot like that, even in one of my small chunks, and it takes a little more effort to go through. As you can see, most of them are not that difficult. That's Burley Boy on squirrel patrol. Come here, baby. Good boy. Good boy. Want to say hi to everyone on the camera? Oh, we all love Burley. Oh, yeah, you're the best puppy. Uh-huh. Good job. So that means they are aspens, this is, compared to pines and stuff. They're a very wet tree because they have green leaves in the summer. They're all bare now. And they're just overall more of a moist tree. They make an excellent fire break for this reason, because I do live in an area where there's wildfires, and if you have an aspen grove near your home, it will pretty naturally split a fire out around it if there's a fire coming, because they just don't burn well. The leaves are wet, the bark is like a tree's skin. It's designed to protect the tree. This chunk has a lot of knots. I knew it would be kind of a pain. But anyway, so the bark is somewhat damp and protective, and you can burn bark for sure if you get it hot enough. But aspen bark really does have to get very, very hot to burn, even when it's dead and dry. It's very, very difficult to burn if it's wet and green on a live tree. But for all those reasons, the bugs and the fact that it simply doesn't burn well or heat well, there's some more pine bark. That's why you see me pitching bark off to the side as I split my firewood. Anyway, that was a long intro, but it seems like every time I do anything with wood, I get asked those same questions again. I know there's new people here all the time, so welcome. And if you have more questions about my firewood setup, go to the channel homepage, youtube.com/Nyth. There's a whole playlist tab where things are sorted kind of by topic, and you will find an entire playlist on my wood stove and firewood topics. So go check that out. Now to what I was actually going to talk about today. I've got almost a full wheelbarrow here. I'm going to have to empty shortly. When I did a video about replacing this axe handle, I got quite a few comments, and some of them made me think of a topic I wanted to discuss. There were people who suggested, quite correctly, that would have been easier to do if I had a vise and a little workshop and this and that and the other. And none of that is inaccurate. I would agree with that. Replacing an axe handle would be easier if you had all of that. But I got it done. It seems to be working. I am clearly, as you can see at the moment, able to split wood with my lovely little axe again. And I didn't have a shop and a vise and other tools. Now, are those easier? Going to make it easier to do and quicker? Yes. If you're going to take up repairing people's broken tool handles as a business, or do a whole lot of it as a side hobby, yeah, those would be great things to have. I have, let me see, hand tools that I have. I've got snow shovels, but they don't have wooden handles anyway because they're all one-piece composite material. So those aren't going to have replaceable handles. And Burley would very dearly like me to know he's trying to give me this very important stick you found. Would you like it thrown? You would? You would? Oh, that's what you're asking? You would like it thrown? I don't know if people can see your face on the camera because you're looking at me. He's a funny puppy. That would make it all, easier. So for me, I don't have snow shovels with handles. I have this axe that has a handle. I have a spading fork, which I mostly use in my compost pile, which has a wood handle. That's something that stays in my little tiny, it's probably out of the camera, but that little reclaimed outhouse that's now my tool shed for most of the year. That was actually a tool that I bought new because I'd been looking for a while and nobody ever had a spading fork, either whole or a handle, or head minus a handle, available secondhand that I could find, so I finally bought one. I don't anticipate that handle needing replaced for a very long time, maybe ever in my lifetime, because it doesn't get the kind of impact that swinging an axe does in its regular course of work. I have a hoe with a wooden handle that I very occasionally use in the garden, but with the raised beds I have now, almost never. What else do I have with a wooden handle? Some things like a small hammer, but again, it's not like I do construction. That's used for occasional projects, so I don't anticipate probably replacing that ever in my life. So really the only thing this one is close to the bottom of a tree and almost starting to get rotten. It's not going to be awesome firewood. I can feel how pithy it is. I think I'm actually going to put that off on the burn in the outside fire pit pile, just because once they get that pithy, they don't make enough heat to be worth doing inside. So for my life, I have one thing that I'm likely to replace the handle on. Given enough years, I will probably replace this handle again at some point. But having a wood shop and a vise and a workshop, tool shop, whatever, and all that, for something that I do once every 6 to 10 to 15 years, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying you can't have it. Oh, you want it thrown again? I see you. But one of the things I like about my life is I have very little stuff to manage. Very little stuff in my house. Just all over very little stuff. And again, this is not a criticism of anyone who has a more complete tool shop than I or anything like that. Those can be very handy for a lot of projects, and I have been able to trade meals and stuff to people who have tool shops for an occasional project that I don't have the equipment to do myself. But my point that I was trying to get around to was that if it's something I'm only going to do once a decade or so, keeping and maintaining and storing and repairing and thinking about and having to potentially move or whatever, something that I'm going to use that infrequently, it's just not worth it to me. It's far more effort than put into all that than the effort it would save me in the process of replacing an axe handle every now and then. And that's kind of how I try to think about a whole lot of things in my life, not specific to axe handles and vices and so on. And again, it's certainly not inaccurate that that would make it easier, and I'm not at all saying anybody shouldn't have one. I never say that stuff here. If you guys have been watching for any length of time, you know that. I never tell you guys what to do. I try to show you what I'm doing, tell you why, until you figure out what works best for you and your life and your situation and your goals and what you want to accomplish. I don't think everyone should live in a tiny house. I just think it's a really great option for me, and I tell and show you guys why, and to think about what if that or something else you haven't thought of may be a good option for your goals. Anyway, kind of the same thing with stuff. I have stuff that other people don't want. I have 3 cameras. You can go see the video about camera gear if you want to see them all. Photography is something that I both do to be able to share this stuff with you guys. I believe my wheelbarrow's about to be considered full. And wildlife photography is just a hobby that I really, really enjoy doing. So in some ways, compared to some people, I have an excess of some things like cameras. Most people in the world don't need or want or use 3 cameras. I use all 3 of mine almost every single day. So that's something I want to have. But something making the time and space and effort to have both the expense of acquiring, but more so what I'm thinking of is, even if you gave them to me all for free, the long-term expense of keeping and thinking about maintaining and storing things is worth it for me, for something that I use almost every day and often multiple times a day. Something that I keep and use one time every few years, not generally worth it to me, unless it's one of those things that's in the category of like bear spray or a first aid kit, the kind of things I hope to never use, ever, but they could be very, very important if you did need them. So there's a couple things like that, but I see it, baby boy. You want this thrown? Again, one more time? You really do? Okay. It's just not worth it. And again, you may decide different things. I'm sure we all will. But that's kind of how I think about things. If I want to acquire something, is this something that I will use enough or get enough value from when I do use it, or be important and urgent enough when I might need it, that is worth my, not just time and space, though of course we're all limited on time, and I have chosen to live with limited space. But for me, even the bigger thing is like mental energy. It gets smaller every time. What did you do with the rest of it? You chewed it off. You did. It gets hard to throw when you do that. How am I supposed to throw it when you make it so little? It's like a wood chip. The mental and emotional energy that is required just to keep stuff, whatever that stuff is. And I work for a lot of very wealthy people with a lot of stuff, and I have no problem with that if that's what you'd like to have. But I gotta admit, when I leave most of their places, after doing some kind, usually of maintaining of stuff, I don't think, man, I'm jealous I wish I had more stuff like that. Man, I'm so glad I don't have that much stuff, that I don't have to worry about, think about it. Okay, we're gonna lose that one. You've got it a little bit little and splintery. Now you'll have to find a new stick. There's other sticks in the woods. To think about and care for. And I see the amount of time and energy it takes to repair things and upgrade things and take care of things and get somebody to fix things and look after things. And I'm so glad I don't have that for much. I do for a few things. And again, I probably pick some different things that I want to have that some of you wouldn't care at all about or find the effort to include in your lives. But that's because we all have different interests and hobbies and skills and talents, and I think that's wonderful. But that's really, and I guess I was thinking kind of about stuff as we head into the gift giving season, and before you know it, it'll be Black Friday, and people will be out trying to kill each other in malls to acquire more stuff, and a lot of us will be just sitting at home anyway, but acquiring stuff via the internet with at least less risk of being trampled to death. But when I'm going to acquire new stuff, that's really what I have to think about. I mean, there's the more basic considerations of, do I want it at all? You know, you give me a set of golf clubs, that doesn't do anything for me. Golf doesn't interest me. Give me a new backpacking tent, that probably does. I like to backpack, as you guys can tell. And I don't need a new backpacking tent. I have a very lovely one that one of you subscribers bought for me, and I hope to use it for many, many years like I did the last 2 backpacking tents I have. Just for example. So do I want it at all? Is it something I would use in my life, like an axe, or the pots and pans in my kitchen? Or is it something that I just think would be nice? And even most of the things I think are nice, I've learned I tend to think they're nice because they also do something useful. Like feeding the birds is nice. I get a great deal of pleasure, and it seems like a lot of you do too, from watching the birds and enjoying them. But they're not just freeloaders. They also do a job for me. They do bug patrol. Every morning in the summer when I wake up and look out in my garden, which I can see quite handily from not even moving my head off the pillow in the bed in my loft, I look out and there's these little birds bouncing around under a cabbage leaf, in between the strawberry plants, and I see them like pecking here and there on things I can't even see. There's no way, even if I spent 24 hours a day, or at least all the daylight hours of a day, out in my garden looking for bugs to pick off of things, that I could ever find the volume of bugs to do as good a job as my little mini birds do. So they do a valuable service for me. Plus, as I said, I get a great deal of pleasure from just watching them. So even if they didn't work for me by doing bug patrol, I'd probably still enjoy feeding the birds. Anyway, but most of the things I like do tend to have something useful to my life. I saw it. I don't know if you guys can see Burley. That's the end you already chewed off. Why don't you find me a bigger stick? Go find me a bigger stick. That one's too little for throwing. This is often how Burley and I play while we're working. Somebody had asked me when I shared his favorite toy when we play with his frisbee gun, as I call it, the Hurricane 9. How did I teach him to retrieve? I didn't teach him to retrieve, guys. The other dogs I have had in my life have been retriever breeds, so I've never had a dog that wasn't interested in retrieving personally, but I think for the most part that's pretty hardwired in through hundreds and thousands of years of genetics. Ever since he was a puppy, he does this. He scours the woods, brings back a twig or a stick, or he really likes the big ones. If he thinks he could drag a whole tree over here for me, he would want me to throw it for him. And he brings it back because he wants it thrown again. And he will do this the whole time I'm working, as long as he can keep finding sticks, or I keep throwing the same stick. He chews it down until it's this tiny little bit of a wood chip and still brings it back to me and wants me to throw it again. That's not trained or learned behavior at all. That's just, he loves doing it. So retrieving fetching games are fun with him. And sometimes if we have to get something else done, his stick has to accidentally get lost a little bit. Like if you ever watched this with some kids I was babysitting, the Despicable Me, where the mean guy says that the toy was accidentally lost on purpose. We have some sticks that get accidentally lost on purpose, because otherwise he doesn't ever want to stop. So this is kind of a ramble, just while I do my work here. I love wood splitting. This is relaxing to me. The other parts of firewood, you know, cutting the tree trunks as they fall down, or cutting them down from standing dead trees into long logs and cutting them into rounds, that's fine. And it's certainly most efficiently done with the chainsaw. But it's harder to chat with you guys, or think, or talk to my dog, or if you see that little player sitting over there, listen to books while I work. And I can do all that while I split firewood. So this, it really is my favorite job. And splitting firewood is work, but kind of back to my log size, with it being so little, it's not a lot of work. I think some of you guys who say, oh, I'm so impressed, you can do anything and you're so strong and tough, you haven't split 7.5-inch rounds of softwood. It's really not that impressive. It's not hard at all. Like for most of those, you can see how far I'm choked up on that handle, because I just don't need more force. It really is easy, except for the few when I hit a couple knots in a single round, and then it requires a little bit of force to get through. But for the most part, not. So anyway, I like to sometimes chat with you guys about what I'm thinking out. I often, when Burley and I go for hikes, I often have things that I'm just pondering as I enjoy the walk, enjoy the view. It's harder to talk to the camera then, because when you're walking at a good pace, you're often breathing somewhat hard. Then everyone will ask you, are you sure you're okay and you're not ill? And you can't hold the camera very steady. But I can set the camera there steadily while I'm doing something like this in one single position and chat. And then when I turn it off, I'm going to go back to listening to my book. I occasionally get asked by folks about what I'm listening to. Would you all be interested in, actually I've thought about it a few times, doing little book reviews? Like, now we're really getting this episode all rambly and all over the place. I have no idea what I'll name this video when I try to share it. But I do love to read. I've always loved to read. Both my parents like to read. They did read books to me when I was a child, some when I was very young. Then they were very busy with my other siblings. But they still always had a lot of books in the house, and actually bought, at that time, books on cassette, and listened through, even before I could quite read them myself, a lot of famous works of fiction and whatever, via cassette tape. And I have always loved listening to audiobooks. I also love to physically sit down and hold a book and read, but there's obvious logistical challenges with doing that while splitting firewood. But I can listen to books while I split firewood, or cook, or clean, or all kinds of things like that. And I've listened to or read good ones, bad ones, all kinds of things. But anyway, would you guys be interested in some book reviews, the ones I really like and think other people might enjoy if they read as well? Just comment down below and tell me what you think. In the meantime, if you're just interested in some books I really like, if you've ever checked out the site goodreads.com, spelled just like you would think, 2 words written together, goodreads.com. They have a pretty neat site where you can list things you're reading and review it and all. There's, I think, close to 700 books or something like that I have on my Goodreads list. You just look for Ariel. Mine should pop up on there. Maybe if I remember, I'll put a link right under here. But anyway, you can see quite a few hundred of books I've read that I like. There's, of course, many more, but I haven't taken the time to put all the ones that I thought were less impressive on there. I guess I tried to specifically include ones that I really did enjoy or value for one reason or another. So if you like to read and you want to know some of the books I've enjoyed, go check out that list. It's getting dark here. We're going to go in here shortly. I'll finish filling this wheelbarrow full and then call it quits for the night. And now I've rambled on about all kinds of things, but sometimes it's just fun to chat because I get so many questions from so many people, and it's fun to interact with you folks and know what other people are thinking and doing and so on. And yeah, I guess I had the topic of stuff really on my mind between a few things I've done with working around other people's stuff recently, and thinking all the stuff I already see when I go into town, Christmas music and gifts and wrapping paper and stuff everywhere. So I know people are thinking about getting more stuff, and I have no problem with I love having all the useful stuff, like having this axe and this old wheelbarrow, both things that are very useful stuff in my life. But acquiring stuff just for the sake of stuff, I caution you guys to maybe think about before you do acquire new things. Does this really help you, or do you really enjoy it, or get real pleasure from it, like bird watching or something like that? Or does it just look cool right now, and as soon as you get home, you're not going to look at it again, you're never going to think about it, it's going to pile up in a closet somewhere, and then sometime you, or after you die, somebody who you care about is going to have to deal with it and clean it up and get rid of it. And it's going to be a waste of all the effort and materials and whatever that went into making the thing, and waste of your effort and money that went into purchasing it, and all of that. And I'm not at all anti-stuff. I'm just all for useful and good stuff, which is one reason I have a bit of an attachment to things that are useful for a long time. Like however old this axe head is, however old that wheelbarrow is, that's something else I got secondhand. It's got a lot of dents and dings, and it's far from new. It'd be fun if these old things could talk, because it'd be fun to hear their histories if they could tell you what all they've seen and who all they've been around and what all they've done in their lives. We ought to write a series of books about that. Stories of an old axe head or an old wheelbarrow and so on. That'd be fun to read. Anyway, just think about stuff. Don't weigh your lives down with stuff. It can be hard. I know that me and most of my friends that I know, I think it's even worse if you have children who live in tiny houses or other small spaces, or even live in bigger houses, but just, you want the bark? Yeah? Okay, you can have it. Have chosen to have less stuff in their life. The gift-giving time, even if that's not you, maybe think about that. That can be a difficult time, because when people give you things that you don't want, don't need, don't have any room for, and literally can't get into your house without getting rid of something you do actually use, it can make life difficult. And you never want to be ungrateful, because you know that people gave you that with wanting to do something nice and bless you, and so it gets really awkward to try to explain how you don't want that. And that doesn't mean I hate you and I don't like you and I wish you'd never offered me anything. It just means I don't have a use for that thing. But a lot of people have a really hard time understanding that, especially some moms and grandmas. And if YouTube's analytics is right, probably a whole bunch of you watching are moms and grandmas, and not that grandfathers are exempt. But anyway, just think about that. If you got somebody who wants to live a life with less stuff, that buying them stuff may be a burden. Now, of course, there's almost always stuff that someone needs. If you know somebody needs a new axe, I mean, by all means, buy them an axe. But if you don't know of something that somebody actually needs and would use, maybe think about, instead of stuff, getting experiences. Instead of a new thing that's going to go in the back of a closet and and pile up somewhere. And I can't tell you how many closets I've cleaned with brand new stuff in the back of them with tags still on. Somebody bought it and paid money for it, and it's been sitting for some number of years in the back of the closet, never having been touched. That makes me kind of sad. But instead of that, why not buy experiences? Does whoever you're wanting to buy a gift for, do they want to go to a concert that they maybe can't afford, or wouldn't choose the money to spend the money on themselves? Think about getting them a concert ticket, or they'd like to go on a horseback trail ride, or even take courses. Somebody'd like to take a cooking course, or a knitting course, or a canning course, or photography course, or whatever. Get something like that. The things that are not an object that might sit around unused, but experiences. This one's going to be a pain. It's got multiple very large knots in it. Or things that people are like, oh, that's not cool, that's not fun. I used to host a whole lot of guests from all over the world through an organization called Couchsurfing. You know what one of the best hostess gifts is when you host a lot of people? And it's not romantic or cool or fun or sexy or anything, but toilet paper. When I had house guests that would buy a case of toilet paper and leave it, that was absolutely awesome. Because especially if you have a lot of people in your house, you're probably going to go through things like that. And I've always loved useful gifts like that. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. It's getting dark. We're going to go inside, me and my burly boy, have a little dinner. But that's some thoughts about stuff. And got some firewood split and ready for the wood stove. And tell me what you think about book reviews down below. And whatever all you all are doing, have a lovely day. And I hope that we all have the stuff that we need to actually do the things that we do value and care about, and not a whole lot more than that. You guys have a great night. Hi folks, Ariel over here. Thanks for spending some of your valuable time watching these videos. Hopefully you found something beautiful, educational, interesting, peaceful, relaxing, or useful while you were here. If so, find more videos here, subscribe so you don't miss any updates, and if you like what you found here, feel free to like and share away so that others can benefit as well. You all have a wonderful day.